Welcome to Scary Diaries, where the ordinary turns into the extraordinary, and every shadow hides a story waiting to be told. Tonight, we have Bring Some Incidents, which is reeled to Terrifier caught on camera or expressed by defectives itself. So, let not waste any time and dig into these stories. When an investigative journalist, Jesse Pierce, heard about the Carnival Killer, a local legend, about a missing clown linked to unsolved disappearances, she thought it was the perfect opportunity to gain attention for her online true crime series. The abandoned carnival grounds where the stories originated had been closed for over a decade. Skeptics dismissed the tales as rumors fueled by bored locals, but Jessie saw a story worth chasing. On a cold Friday night, Jessie packed her camera gear and drove to the outskirts of the town, unaware she was walking straight into her last investigation. The carnival grounds were worse than Jessie had imagined. Rusted rides loomed like skeletons in the moonlight, and the once colorful banners and posters hung in tattered ribbons, whispering in the wind. As Jessie began filming, she narrated the legend for her viewers. In the early 2000s, this carnival was a booming attraction, known for its eccentric cast of performers. But everything changed when people started disappearing. The rumors pointed to a clown, a performer named Art, who vanished the same night the carnival closed. Over a dozen victims were never found. Locals say he still roams the area, but that's just a ghost story, right? Her tone was lighthearted, but the unease in her voice was palpable. She turned her flashlight towards the Ferris wheel, its skeletal frame looming over the grounds. The wind creaked through the empty carriages. As she explored deeper, Jessie noticed something strange. No signs of life, not even animals. The air felt unnaturally still, heavy. She brushed it off as nerves, but couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Jessie entered the main tent, where faded posters of performers still clung to the walls. She zoomed in on a particularly unsettling one: Art the Clown, the man behind the mask. The poster showed a pale-faced clown with dark, hollow eyes and a wide, unnatural grin. Suddenly, her flashlight flickered. She tapped it, muttering about cheap batteries, when she caught movement in her peripheral vision. Swinging the flashlight, she saw nothing but the empty rows of seats around the ring. Shrugging it off, Jessie decided to explore the funhouse next. The building seemed surprisingly intact, with mirrors lining the walls. As she moved through the maze, her reflection multiplied, distorting her face into grotesque shapes. She laughed nervously into her camera, then she froze. In one of the mirrors, among her warped reflections, a figure stood still, a man in a clown costume, grinning, staring directly at her. Whipping around, Jessie saw nothing but empty space behind her. Heart pounding, she turned back to the mirror. This time, the figure was closer, almost behind her. Jessie bolted out of the funhouse, her breathing ragged. Okay, she whispered to herself. It's just in my head, just nerves. But then she heard it, the faint sound of circus music, barely audible over the wind. It came from the direction of the carousel. Against her better judgment, Jessie followed the sound, her camera rolling. The carousel was moving, its once bright lights flickering weakly. A single horse bobbed up and down, its chipped paint glinting in the moonlight. Jessie stepped closer, her footsteps crunching on the gravel. That's when she saw it. A balloon tied neatly to the carousel's control panel. On it, scrawled in red marker, were the words, "Wanna play?" Jessie's stomach churned. She turned and ran, but the music followed her, growing louder, distorted. It wasn't coming from the carousel anymore. It was everywhere. Jessie sprinted towards the parking lot, her flashlight bouncing erratically. When she reached her car, her hands fumbled for the keys. Just as she unlocked the door, she noticed something on the windshield. Another balloon. Inside the car, panic surged through her as she turned to see the passenger seat and froze. The clown was behind the car there, grinning silently, his head tilted slightly, as if amused by her terror. Jessie screamed and stumbled backward, tripping over her own feet. When she looked up, the clown was gone. The car door was wide open, and the balloon floated lazily into the night. She tried to rationalize it. I'm hallucinating. I'm just tired. But deep down, she knew she wasn't. Determined to prove herself, Jessie decided to retrieve her camera, which she'd dropped during her flight. Returning to the carnival felt like stepping into a trap, but she convinced herself it was the only way to regain control. She found her camera near the Ferris wheel, miraculously intact. As she picked it up, she felt a presence behind her. Turning slowly, up close, his painted face was grotesque, his grin wide and unnatural. But what unnerved Jessie the most was his silence. He didn't laugh, didn't speak, just stared. Art pulled out a small horn and squeaked at once, his head tilting like a curious dog. Then he lunged. Jessie ran, but the clown was relentless, always just a step behind. She stumbled into the main tent, hoping to hide, but the sound of the horn echoed around her, growing louder. She couldn't tell where it was coming from. Finally, she turned to face him. "What do you want?" she screamed, her voice breaking. Art tilted his head, his grin never faltering. He raised a finger to his lips, a mockery of silence, before raising a blade. Jessie's body was never found, but her camera was discovered weeks later, uploaded to a dark web forum. The footage ended abruptly. Locals say that if you visit at night, you might find a balloon tied to the Ferris wheel. And if you hear circus music, it's already too late. Story 2. In the late 2012, Ethan Greisen applied for security guard because he needed money to live. During his shift at night, he saw many things circulating around him. Ethan had taken the job reluctantly. The pay was decent, and he needed the money to cover his college tuition. But the overnight shifts were eerily quiet, and the vast, empty mall always gave him the creeps. One Friday night, Ethan was assigned a solo shift. His task was straightforward: patrol the mall, ensure no trespassers broke in, and report any unusual activity. Armed with a flashlight, a walkie-talkie, and his phone, he set off into the silent, cavernous space. The first few hours were uneventful. Ethan walked past boarded-up storefronts and empty kiosks, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. Occasionally, he'd hear a creak or a rustle, but he chalked it up to the wind or the building settling. Around midnight, his walkie-talkie crackled. A distorted voice broke the silence. "Having fun yet?" Ethan froze. "Who is this? This isn't funny," he replied, his voice steady but laced with unease. No response, just static. Trying to shake off the incident, Ethan continued his patrol. But the atmosphere felt different now. The air was colder, heavier. As he passed the old toy store, he noticed something odd. One of the rocking horses in the display window was moving, slowly, rhythmically, back and forth. Ethan stopped, shining his flashlight into the window. The rest of the toys were covered in dust, untouched for years, but the rocking horse swayed, as if being pushed. "Wind," Ethan muttered to himself. "It's just the wind." But there was no draft. Suddenly, a loud clunk echoed from deeper in the mall, like something heavy had fallen. Ethan's heart raced as he moved toward the source of the noise, his flashlight trembling in his grip. He reached the food court and found a single chair overturned in the center of the room. Next to it was a balloon, red, shiny, and impossibly out of place. Ethan stepped closer, hesitant. Attached to the balloon was a note. Scribbled in messy, childlike handwriting were the words, "Playtime." Ethan scanned the area with his flashlight, his nerves on edge. "Is someone here?" he called out, trying to sound authoritative. His voice echoed, but no response came. As he turned to leave, he caught a glimpse of movement in the corner of his eye. Swinging the flashlight around, he saw him, a clown in a black and white suit, standing perfectly still at the edge of the food court. The clown's face was painted white, his lips stretched into an exaggerated grin, and his hollow eyes seemed to pierce right through Ethan. He held a small horn in one hand and waved slowly with the other. "Very funny," Ethan said, his voice shaking. "You need to leave. Now." The clown didn't move. Ethan reached for his phone to call his supervisor, but when he looked back, the clown was gone. Determined to figure out who was messing with him, Ethan began searching the mall. His nerves were fraying, but he convinced himself it was just a prank. As he moved through the darkened halls, the sound of circus music began to play faintly, seemingly coming from nowhere. The melody was distorted, warped, and grew louder the deeper he went. Ethan reached the old arcade, where the music seemed loudest. The machines were long dead, their screens shattered and buttons missing. But in the center of the room was another balloon tied to the joystick of a broken game. The screen of the game flickered to life, displaying a single message. "Turn around." Ethan spun around, and there he was again, the clown, standing inches away. Before Ethan could react, the clown honked his horn, the sound deafening in the small space. Ethan stumbled back, but the clown didn't move. Instead, he tilted his head as if curious and raised a finger to his lips, signaling silence. Then he lunged. Ethan ran, adrenaline pumping as he darted through the mall's labyrinthine halls. The clown followed, silent but relentless, his heavy boots thudding against the floor. Every exit Ethan tried was locked, and the mall's layout seemed to twist and change, leading him in circles. The distorted circus music played on, taunting him. Finally, Ethan spotted the security office, a small, locked room with a reinforced door. He sprinted inside, slamming the door behind him and locking it. His hands shook as he grabbed the office phone to call 911. He called and said, "There's someone in the mall. He's chasing me. He's dressed as a clown, and I can't." The line went dead. The music stopped. The next morning, when Ethan's replacement arrived, the security office was empty. Ethan was gone, his belongings left behind. The only trace of him was a red balloon tied to his chair and the words, "Game over," scrawled on the wall in red paint. Authorities investigated, but found no evidence of a break-in or foul play. Ethan's disappearance was ruled a missing persons case, though locals believe he fell victim to the infamous Carnival Killer. To this day, the mall remains abandoned, but thrill-seekers who visit claim to hear faint circus music and the sound of a horn echoing in the darkness. Story 3. What was supposed to be a night of fun turned into a nightmare for 3 college students who stayed behind after a Halloween party. The group, chasing a thrill, decided to explore an abandoned event center where whispers of dark happenings and an infamous clown lingered. But by the time the night was over, only one would live to tell the tale. Kayla, Jordan, and Mia had just left a Halloween party at their university. Dressed in costumes and slightly tipsy, they weren't ready for the night to end. That's when Jordan brought up the idea of visiting the Timberline Event Center, an old venue that had been shut down for years after a deadly fire. People say a clown used to perform there, Jordan explained, grinning. Some say he never left. Mia hesitated. I don't know. I've heard weird stuff about that place. Oh, come on, Kayla laughed. It's Halloween. Let's make it fun. Reluctantly, Mia agreed, and the 3 piled into Jordan's car, driving to the outskirts of town where the event center stood. The building was a decaying husk, its facade covered in graffiti and vines. The air was colder here, and the sound of rustling leaves seemed amplified in the quiet night. Jordan kicked open a side door, and they stepped inside, flashlights in hand. The cavernous interior smelled of mildew and ash. Broken chairs and tables were scattered across the floor, and faded banners still hung from the rafters. As they explored, the group laughed and joked to hide their nerves. Kayla took a selfie in front of a crumbling stage, captioning it, "Ghost Hunting Squad." But as they moved deeper into the building, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavier, and the sound of their footsteps echoed unnaturally. Mia stopped suddenly. Did you hear that? What? Jordan asked, rolling his eyes. Mia pointed toward a dark hallway. I thought I heard laughing. Kayla laughed nervously. Okay, you're just trying to scare us now. But then they heard it too, a faint, high-pitched giggle echoing from the shadows. Probably some kids messing around, Jordan said, though his voice wavered. Let's keep going. Reluctantly, they pressed on, the giggling growing fainter. They found themselves in what used to be a banquet hall. In the center of the room was a single chair. Tied to it was a red balloon. Kayla approached the balloon cautiously, her flashlight trembling in her hand. Attached to the balloon was a note that read, "Welcome to the show." Okay, this is officially creepy, Mia said, backing away. As Jordan leaned in to inspect the note, the balloon suddenly popped, the sound echoing like a gunshot. The group jumped, and Mia let out a scream. Relax, Jordan said, trying to play it cool. It's just a balloon. But before they could collect themselves, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the room. The 3 spun around, shining their flashlights into the darkness. Standing at the far end of the hall was a figure, a clown, dressed in a black and white suit with a grotesque painted face. He didn't move, didn't speak. He just stood there, staring. Who is that? Kayla whispered. Probably some idiot trying to scare us, Jordan said, though his voice was shaky. Let's just leave. As they turned to go, the clown began to walk toward them, slowly, deliberately. Run, Mia said, her voice barely a whisper. The 3 bolted down the hallway, their footsteps echoing wildly. The clown's heavy boots followed, the sound growing louder and faster. They burst into the lobby, desperately searching for the door they'd come through. But the building seemed different now. Doorways they'd passed earlier were gone, and hallways stretched endlessly in every direction. This way, Jordan yelled. They ran until they reached a dead end. The clown was nowhere to be seen, but the sound of his footsteps had stopped. "Where is he?" Kayla whispered, her flashlight darting around. Suddenly, a loud honk echoed from behind them. They turned to see the clown standing at the end of the hall, holding a horn in one hand and a knife in the other. He tilted his head, then began to run. The group scattered, each bolting in a different direction. Kayla found herself in a storage room, hiding behind a stack of boxes. Her breathing was ragged as she tried to stay silent. She heard the sound of the clown's boots entering the room, slow and deliberate. A faint squeak of his horn sent shivers down her spine. Kayla peeked out and saw him dragging the blade along the wall, leaving scratches in the peeling paint. She tried to hold her breath, but the sound of her racing heart seemed deafening. The clown stopped in front of her hiding spot, tilting his head as if sensing her. Kayla closed her eyes, praying he'd leave. He didn't. Meanwhile, Jordan had made it back to the banquet hall. He grabbed a broken chair leg, clutching it like a weapon. "Come on, you freak," he yelled, trying to summon courage. The clown appeared in the doorway, his smile wider than ever. Jordan swung the chair leg, but the clown dodged effortlessly, grabbing Jordan by the throat. With inhuman strength, he lifted Jordan off the ground, squeezing until the struggling stopped. Mia, the most cautious of the group, managed to stay hidden in the kitchen. She clutched her phone, trying to dial 911. But there was no signal. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the clown appeared at the far end of the kitchen. Mia screamed and threw a pan at him, but it only made him laugh, a deep, guttural sound. She ran, but he was faster. Here's a satisfying and gripping ending to the story, with a good mix of survival and suspense. Mia ran through the labyrinthine halls, her legs burning and her heart pounding. Every corner felt like a dead end, but she refused to give up. Unlike her friends, Mia had always been cautious, always observant. And that's when she remembered something: the emergency exit. Earlier in the night, she had noticed a rusted exit sign near the banquet hall, partially hidden behind debris. She just had to make it there. Behind her, the clown's laughter echoed, growing louder. She didn't dare look back. Finally, she spotted the dimly glowing sign in the distance. With one final burst of adrenaline, Mia sprinted toward it. She shoved the debris aside and pushed the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Come on," she cried, slamming her shoulder against it. The laughter was closer now. In desperation, Mia spotted a broken pipe nearby. She grabbed it and wedged it against the door, using all her strength to pry it open. The door groaned, and fresh air rushed in, but before she could escape, a hand grabbed her shoulder. She spun around to see the clown, his wide grin now inches from her face. "No!" she screamed, swinging the pipe with all her strength. It connected with his face, sending him stumbling back. Seizing the moment, Mia pushed through the door and ran into the night. Hours later, Mia was found wandering along the highway, barefoot and covered in dirt. She flagged down a passing car and was taken to the police station, where she told her story. Authorities searched the event center, but found no trace of the clown or her friends. The only evidence left behind was a red balloon tied to the rusted exit door. Mia moved away shortly after, trying to leave the nightmare behind. But even years later, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. One morning, as she stepped out of her apartment, she found a balloon tied to her car door. Attached was a note that read, "See you soon." She then posted her story on Facebook, and after that, she was never found. Hope You like the video, please click the like button for further more interesting stories. Good night.